All right, let's just get right into it. Have you ever been so hurt, so completely blindsided that you just go quiet? The words are just gone. To the outside world, maybe it looks like you're being cold or distant or even trying to be manipulative. But what if that's not it at all? What if that silence isn't some character flaw? We're going to break down the real psychology of why we shut down, and trust me, it's something science gets in a way society really, really doesn't.
This right here is the whole game changer. It's the key we need to start with. See, it might look like you're building a wall to keep people out, right? But what's really going on is that you're just holding yourself in. You're gathering up all the pieces to keep from falling apart. And believe me, there's a massive, massive difference between those two things. Getting this is key to understanding everything else we're about to talk about.
So, why does this happen? What is actually going on under the hood when we get hit with that wave of hurt? Because it's one thing to know what it feels like, but it's another thing entirely to understand why our own bodies and brains seem to choose silence right when we feel like we should be screaming. So, let's dive in and really look at the wiring.
Okay, first things first, let's just bust the biggest myth right out of the gate. People look at that silence and they assume it's a choice, a tactic, like it's some kind of calculated power move or you're deliberately giving them the silent treatment. They think you've sat there, weighed all the options and decided, yep, silence is the weapon I'm going to use. But, oh man, that could not be more wrong.
The truth is, it's not a decision you make, it's a shift that happens to you. It's almost like a physical takeover. Something inside your body just changes. It's this quiet closing down. Suddenly words feel like they're a million miles away. Your chest gets tight. And trying to explain a feeling you haven't even wrapped your own head around yet, it feels literally impossible. This isn't a conversational strategy. It's a full-on physiological state.
So, okay, if it's not a choice, then what in the world is it? Well, this is where the science gets so cool. What you're feeling is actually your brain's own built-in safety system. It's a biological feature and it's kicking in. Yeah, you can literally think of it like your brain slamming on the emergency brake for your emotions.
And it actually has a name. It's called the freeze response. We know from the incredible work of people like Dr. Peter Levine that this is just as primal and hardwired as fight or flight. This isn't you being weak. It's not you avoiding things. It's a survival instinct. When that emotional pain feels too big, too fast, your brain hits that brake to stop you from being totally overwhelmed. It's literally slowing everything down so you can survive the hit.
And this chart just lays out the disconnect so perfectly. On one side, you have what people assume, that it's a conscious choice, that you're avoiding something, that it's a sign of weakness. But then you look at what's actually happening. It's an unconscious reflex, it's an act of pure protection, and it's an incredibly powerful survival mechanism that your own nervous system is launching to take care of you.
Okay, but get this. This is the part that just blew my mind. Researchers have actually seen that when you're in this state of emotional overwhelm, the part of your brain that produces language, it literally goes quieter. It becomes less active. So think about that. When someone is standing there demanding, just talk to me, it's not that you won't, it's that your brain has physically made words harder to find. It's rerouted power to the more urgent job, just keeping you from falling apart.
But here's the thing. This super powerful freeze response, it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. We are not born this way. Nope, this is a learned behavior. It's a skill that we had to acquire, and for most of us, the story of how we learned it starts way, way back. I mean, just think about it. When we're babies, we are loud. We scream, we cry, we let every single feeling out without a filter. Pain is expressed openly, unapologetically. But then, something changes. Somewhere in childhood, we learn a new rule. Expressing our hurt out loud isn't safe. And we learn that lesson so well that by the time we're adults, silence is our default. It's an automatic protective reflex we don't even have to think about.
So how did we learn that lesson? Well, for a lot of us, it was growing up in a home where our feelings were treated like an inconvenience. Maybe when you cried, you heard things like, oh, stop being so sensitive. Or maybe even worse, you took a risk, you were vulnerable to someone, and they either brushed it off or used it against you later. It all comes back to attachment theory, stuff from psychologists like Bowlby. When our first, most important relationships teach us that being vulnerable just leads to more pain, well, our nervous system writes that down in permanent ink.
And this is so important to hear. Your silence is not a character flaw. It's not something wrong with you. It is a brilliant, powerful survival skill that a younger version of you built to protect yourself. It was an adaptation to an environment that wasn't safe. You learned to be quiet, not because you didn't have feelings, but because showing them was just too dangerous. And you know what? It absolutely worked. That skill is what got you through.
All right, now, let's pull back the curtain and look at what's happening on the inside during those silent moments. Because from the outside, it might look like total stillness, right? Like a calm lake. But underneath the surface, your brain is working overtime. In fact, it's doing some of the most complex, high-level processing it ever does.
And we know this from brain scans. Researchers looked at what's going on in the brain during these moments and found something amazing. The parts of your brain responsible for self-reflection, for digging through memories, for trying to predict what happens next, they all light up like a Christmas tree. They become way more active. So that quiet exterior, it's hiding one of the busiest, most mentally intense states you can possibly be in.
So what does all that internal work sound like? Well, it's this super fast internal monologue, right? It's asking a million questions a second. Okay, what was my part in this? Hang on, have I felt this exact way before? What is this actually about underneath it all? And the big one, if I say something right now, is it just going to make everything worse? See, you're not avoiding the issue. You're running a full diagnostic on it because you've learned that speaking before you're sure is a huge risk.
And this all leads to this really painful, kind of ironic situation. A huge part of why you go silent is to protect the relationship, to protect the other person from a messy, unprocessed reaction. But that very same act of protection is almost always met with the one thing that makes you feel less safe: pressure.
In psychology, there's this great concept called the window of tolerance. You can think of it as the emotional sweet spot, right? It's that perfect zone where you can think clearly and feel your emotions at the same time. That's where good, productive conversations happen. But when you're emotionally flooded, you get knocked right out of that window. And you know deep down that nothing good can be said or heard out there. So your silence, that's you just trying to find your way back into the window so you can have the real conversation.
But this is where that destructive cycle kicks in, and it's a trap so many of us fall into. Step 1, you go quiet, trying to process and get back in that window of tolerance. Step 2, the other person feels shut out, panics a little, and starts pushing for an answer right now. Step 3, that pressure instantly confirms your deepest fear, that it's not safe to be vulnerable with them. So what happens? Step 4, the silence gets deeper as an act of self-protection. It's just a tragic, heartbreaking feedback loop.
And what's so tough is that what you actually need in that moment is the complete opposite of what you usually get. All you really need is patience without pressure. That's it. Just a little bit of space to figure things out. You need them to trust that you will come back to the conversation when you're ready. You're not asking anyone to be a mind reader. You're just asking them to trust your process.
Okay, so this brings us to our final point. And honestly, this might be the most important takeaway of all. We have to reframe what comes out of that silence. Because what finally emerges isn't weakness. It's not avoidance. It's something much, much more powerful. It's a form of deep emotional integrity.
Just really think about this for a second. Because you wait until you're truly ready to speak, the words you finally choose have been through a serious vetting process, right? They've been turned over and examined 100 times. You've checked them to make sure they're accurate, that they're fair, that they are your actual truth. You don't just lash out. So what you finally bring to the table isn't some messy, knee-jerk reaction. It's a conclusion.
And that, right there, that's not emotional unavailability. That is emotional integrity. In a world that rewards the fastest, loudest take, you choose to say less, but mean every single word. It's a deep commitment to only speaking your truth once you've actually taken the time and done the hard work to find out what it is.
So in the end, please remember this. Your stillness isn't distance. It's actually the deepest, most considered kind of presence. Presence with yourself. And hopefully for the right people in your life, they'll learn to see it that way too. They'll learn to sit with you in that quiet, without fear, trusting that it's just your way of finding your way back. Because your silence was never a flaw that needed fixing. It has always been a sign of the incredible depth you carry.